Hello, welcome to Wazine. I am your Waziner, Merlin, and today I'm going to teach you how to take an old book and turn it into a sketchbook or journal. And for my example, I'm using a history of modern Germany, 1648 to 1840. A classic read, and turning it into a unique, one-of-a-kind sketchbook that I can, while walking around town, sketch ideas down that I get for new pieces of artwork or designs. And you can do the same. It's fairly easy. You can do it in an afternoon or in a weekend. And keep watching to find out. Your first step is to take your utility knife and cut out the majority of the other pages that are already in the book. For mine, since this has been repaired, it's going to be fairly easy. But yours, you're going to want to be careful to not accidentally cut through the cover of the book, because it will make putting your sketchbook together fairly difficult. So I'm just gonna through and cut. Now, what I did after that was take a piece of paper to hold these pages together. I just taped it on like that, and then you can set this to the side. You'll want to keep it so that you know what size you have to make your pages, but you're basically done with that. And after I took the pages out, I then took masking tape and covered this edge right here, just so I have a nice clean surface to work with instead of the old cardboard that was there. Your next step is to take Mod Podge and cover both the outside and the inside of your cover. I also, before doing this, wrote what the top and the bottom of each side is, so I know whenever I'm putting my pages in later how it's supposed to go in. So you just open your Mod Podge, stick in your little brush, and then you just go over the surface. After you finish Mod Podging, you want to grab the pages of the book that you removed, and then you want to measure roughly the size that you're going to have to make your sketchbook pages. So for example, mine is about 6 inches by about 9 1/4. Yours will probably be different because books have not always been standard sizes. And remember, when you're measuring out your pages to cut, even though you want 6-inch pages this way, you want to cut them 12 inches because you're going to fold it in half so you can bind the pages together. Now, since I am using a roll, which I do not recommend you use a roll of paper for the first time you do bookbinding. I have a little bit of experience, so that's why I decided to go with a roll this time. You can just buy either loose reams or pads of paper to make your own. I like to have 2 different rulers, one that's a regular 12-inch and then also a yardstick. so I can actually measure things out. If you have smaller sheets of paper, you may not need both of them. So the first measurement I'm going to make is I will make a 12-inch mark on my paper, because again, you want it to be double the size of page that you want, since you're going to fold it over. And you want to make at least 2 marks. 3 is better. So 1 at each end and 1 in the middle. Then you take your meter stick or yardstick and you draw a line telling you this is the very edge of where you should be cutting these out. Then for mine, since my pages are going to be 9 1/4 inches tall, I take my ruler, measure out 9 1/4 inches, 9 1/4, and then directly below that, I do another 9 1/4 down, and then instead of going right below for the third, I measure from the bottom edge up 9 1/4. The reason why you measure up from the bottom instead of doing 3 in a row is you want to use the pre-cut corners unless you are ripping your own to get the very artistic detail. And then you just connect your lines or connect your dots so then you know the outlines of each of your pages. And don't worry, you're going to have a little bit left over right here. Save it. It will come in handy later on in the binding process. And then after you cut out, or after you draw those lines, you're ready to cut. Because I am using a roll, I have to basically have heavy books sitting on it so that it doesn't try and roll back up. So what I'm going to do is just take my X-Acto knife and follow the lines that I just drew. It is easier if you cut the long sides of each of your pages first, and then cut out the pages from the main sheet. I also can only do at most 2 at a time because my self-healing mat is not big enough. If you have a very large one, you could do all of this in basically one cut. So I have to cut these 3, and then I can cut it out from the main one, and then I just have to slide down my mat and cut out the other one. Your next step is to measure out the size that you want each page to be out of your large sheet. So, for example, on mine, because I want each sheet to be 6 inches, I measure out 6 inches from each side. So that should be the middle. If it's not, there's an issue. You also want to do at least 3 marks. 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom, 1 in the middle. And I like to switch which side I'm measuring through for each of these. So like do 2 from the top and 1 from the bottom, just to make sure that I did cut the page even. And again, if you are doing the fancy artistic ripped edges, you don't need to be as exact because your pages are not going to look as exact. Because I am trying to do something very functional and usable, it's not as big a deal for me. And then after you've measured these, you just take your page, fold it over like that. So you should have a crease like that. Then you fold it over again, and then you fold the crease. You want, get your nail into it, you want the crease to be very good. Mine, because I'm using a roll, you are going to end up with something like that. You can fix that later on by humidifying the paper, which I'm not going to show in this, but that's how you would fix that. And I'm going to finish folding all of my sheets. Okay, your next step after you have all of your sheets stacked like this, and again, we'll fix the fact that it's kind of curved later, you have to sew your sheets together. So I have this thread that there isn't a like, oh, you need this much. It's just kind of get a bunch of it, cut it off, and then you're going to tie it to the top of your needle. And then after you tie it, to your needle, you have to tie it at the other end. And you're going to want to do at least 3, if not 4 knots at this end, depending on the size of your needle. I am using a fairly small needle, so I can get away with 3, but if you're using a larger needle, you may need to do more. You basically want it to be a lot larger than your hole is going to be. And since this is paper and not fabric, every time that you put the needle through it, the hole is not going to shrink. It's basically going to be the size of your needle. And if you're like me and you suck at getting the knots in the same place, you might end up having to knot it like 6 times. And then it's easiest if you start in this little hump. So you just I usually go about 1/2 inch down from the top, whatever, no exact amount. And then you just poke it through. And then it's just going to be your simple inline stitch. Just like if you were stitching a quilt or something, that's basically what you do with this. You want it to be enough to hold it together, and it doesn't need to be super exact because we're going to do a couple of passes over this. Okay, so now you've done a single pass all the way through. What you're going to do is go back through the holes that you made before, so that you will now have everything covered on each side. And you may have to like flip it over a couple of times just so you can make sure you are getting the holes and can see everything. And then you really only need to go over it twice, and then you can tie it off. But if you would feel more comfortable going over it again, that's perfectly fine. Just to make sure that it's very secure. Okay, after you have all the amount of pages that you want and it's thick enough to fill your book, what you're going to do is you're going to take your thread again and you are going to, this is going to be a difficult task if you're not super gifted with upper body strength, but what you're going to do is basically after you tie off your needle, you're going to stick it through. It helps if you don't use very thick paper like I did. I'm using 90-pound vellum, which if you're familiar with paper, that's very thick. Standard printer paper is about 20 pound. But I want this to be very thick whenever I'm drawing. Okay. Your next step is to attach your pages that you just sewed together into your book cover. I find it easiest if I first use masking tape to just hold it in place. Just while I am trying to get it together. And you may want to, if you skipped putting Mod Podge on everything at the beginning, you may want to rub the tape on your pants a couple of times just to make sure that it's not super sticky. Your next step is to take Mod Podge and cover the area that you're going to go over, or that you need to basically seal. So I'm just going to okay. And then what you can do is just take the strip that you cut earlier whenever you were cutting out your pages and then just put it on. And you're going to want to hold it down, especially if you're using very thick paper like me. If you're using thinner paper, it might just stay. And then you'll just do the same process for the back. Now you have your finished sketchbook, journal, whatever, scrapbook, that you can draw in, write in, put your family pictures in, completed. You can, if you want, you could put like rhinestones or a decal on the cover. I'm going to leave mine plain because it's this nice red color. But you can decorate that in addition to it. Just remember, if you're going to use something like washi tape to decorate it, to make sure that you cover it with Mod Podge so that the tape doesn't get caught on something in your bag and rip off. I love my new sketchbook, and I love how convenient it is to take with me and sketch ideas that I have, or if I see something that I feel like I could incorporate into a piece or into a design, I can quickly sketch it up and go on with my day. It is perfect, and whenever I'm going and showing people my ideas, it's great because they're like, whoa, where did you get that? And I'm like, well, you can do it. You can make one too. For complete instructions on how to do this in writing, as well as all of the materials that this project requires, please go to my website, www.wazines.com, and you can also find out more about me on there and see my entire portfolio. Thanks, and have a good day.